Today's episode is brought to you by Patreon. If you're interested in supporting the show, go to patreon.com/JoshuaVelas and become a $2 backer today and get early access to the new episodes. I'll be leaving a link in the description down below, but for now, on to today's episode. You're listening to the Augment Experience podcast. I'm your host, as usual, Joshua Velas. I'm a student, musician, and a gamer at heart. Join me as I sit down every week to talk about all the latest news in the technology, business, and video game world. I hope you guys enjoy. All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. My name is Joshua Velas. I am your host as usual, and today's episode 55 of the show. Obviously, you guys voted on today's episode, but before we go into the episode, I do want to get a little bit of housekeeping stuff out of the way. Obviously, when you guys are hearing this episode, it is the day after the Apple event, so I will say this, that we will be having an episode Friday for sure, covering the Apple event and going into detail about everything that came out and what was announced, because there's a lot to break down. Obviously, the main thing everybody wants me to talk about is the new iPhones. And I will say this, my predictions were right. The phones did look the way everybody thought they would look. And yeah, they're still ugly. We're not going to deny that. These things are still ugly. There's no reason to argue it. These things look ugly, like really bad ugly. I think overall the 11 is the one that sticks out the most to me. The regular 11, the iPhone 11, sticks out the most due to the pricing and due to what it comes with. I think overall, that I will make the prediction. I know John Prosser will make this prediction too. It will be the best-selling iPhone of the year because of just many reasons that we'll go into in Friday's episode. But obviously, today is not that episode. Today, we're going to be talking about Tesla versus Porsche, especially because of the whole announcement, or really the unveiling of the Porsche Taycan and Taycan Turbo. So, what's going on? What brewed this entire conversation? And besides the Porsche unveiling event, which I will admit, it was a little bit of an organized mess because they wanted to unveil the car at the same time in 3 different locations. But on Twitter, we had a very interesting situation happen on Twitter, mainly because of MKBHD, aka Marquez Brownlee, who posted a tweet on Twitter, and I'm gonna quote the entire tweet, and I'll even leave what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave a link to Marquez's video that he did on his YouTube and his podcast Waveform, where he goes over this entire topic so that you can get where Marquez was coming from, especially because in this tweet, as we all know, Twitter is limited in characters. You can't really do much with what you're given. So Marquez have been constantly elaborating his opinion over and over again. And even when he elaborated his opinion, I do believe there are some points that Marquez is skipping over and is going into dangerous territory when it comes to breaking down this whole debate, or really this comparison that we're drawing. Because I will say this now, you cannot under any circumstances compare cars like you compare smartphones. Specs on a car are much different than specs on a phone. And even when you're comparing specs on a phone, the experience overall is what is key. The support, there's many, I'd say, fundamental levels that are into breaking down comparisons. There's fundamental levels, and we will do that in today's episode, breaking it down, because there is many, many things that need to be discussed in this episode. So, Marquez's original tweet, he posted the Tesla Model S, the performance, the fully maxed out version, starts at, well, it says that it's $1,500 and $999. Its range is 345 mile range. It goes 0 to 60 in 2.4 seconds. It has max speed of 163 miles per hour, and it does have autopilot. While the Porsche Taycan Turbo S starts at, well, the turbo model is $185,000. It has a 280 mile range. It goes 0 to 60 in 2.6 seconds, and it has a max speed of 161 miles. So obviously this caused a lot of things. This caused a lot of people to get outraged with Marquez. Like if you look at the tweet, it's a giant, huge argument that's going on. Especially because, I get it. There's a lot of people that really love Porsches. I am one of them. I really like Porsches. I overall like the design of the cars and everything. But I will say this. When it comes to Porsche, we also have to keep in mind that this is their first electric car as well. Even though, yes, they have been making cars for 100 years now because, well, they are one of the big legacy car manufacturers. This is still their first time getting into the electric car market, especially because when it comes to a legacy car maker specifically, they didn't really care that much about the electric car market. They thought it was just a fad that was coming and then it's going to go away very quickly and no one's going to care about it. But obviously, it seems like it's sticking. And now they're like, well, let's apply all of our 100 years of car design and knowledge and apply it into making a good electric car. However, this kind of led into the whole debate that pissed off the internet when it came to this with Tesla, because obviously Tesla has been making electric cars for a while now. And so far, they are considered the industry standard for what an electric car should be. Now, I will make this distinction very clear right off the bat. I do believe electric cars are still overpriced for what they offer overall. I think there is no benefit to buying an electric car right now because all you're doing is you're a beta tester right now if you have one. You're not quote unquote using future technology. You're just beta testing so that people 4 years down the line will have the finished product. And that's kind of the advice a lot of people gave me when it comes to thinking about this, because all of this that's happening right now, all of this is just beta testing. This is just testing the waters, seeing what sticks, see what doesn't stick, and then later down the line, refine it and make it the way that it should have been to begin with. And a lot of companies do this, especially when it comes to first generation technology. Like, this happens a lot. Even though some people say, well, you can't say the Teslas are first gen. Yes, they still are, because there's still many things Tesla can't get right. And we'll talk about this because there's many fundamental things that comes to buying cars that makes it such a different, I'd say, beast to tackle than smartphones, because you can't, like I mentioned before, you can't just compare specs on paper and that's how it'll work, because cars are much different. There's many, many other aspects that go into it. But so let's go into it. So obviously the easiest one to start with is design. Obviously, yes, when it comes to design, the Porsche does look far better than the Model S. It will. And some people say, well, that's objective. That's not objective. Well, yes, it is objective, because when you have a company that has over 100 years of car design language, you're going to get a really good car, especially when this car is looking very similar to a 911, which is a very, very popular Porsche in many people's opinion. And I agree, because I love the 911 personally. But in terms of design, yes, obviously the interior is relying more on Porsche's design taste and design style, where it's obviously leather, it's very beautiful looking, it's very elegant, very modern. While the Tesla, it does look nice on the inside with this giant display, it's still not, I'd say, as refined as it should be, especially for the price tag that they're charging for these cars. Now, some people say, well, what about the Model 3 being at $40,000? Even then, I can still get a modern 2019, 2020 Honda Accord, and it would still have a better interior than the Model S. And some people, or Model 3, sorry. And some people will probably get on my grill about that, but that's called being honest. Like, we just have to be honest with ourselves. Like, there's many things that you have to give and take, especially when we're talking about cars, because one of the fundamental aspects when it comes to buying a car is seeing how it feels and how you feel inside of it. That's one of the fundamental aspects of owning a car, is how does it make you feel while driving it? How comfortable are you in this vehicle? How does it drive? How does it handle? And this is a very important aspect that a lot of people, I will say, that is a very scary thing when it comes to comparing with Tesla, because Porsche, like I said, Porsche already has been around for 100 years. They already have established factories. They have established shops, especially in some of the major cities. So you can just go and test out a car if you want to buy it, that they'll let you test it. Unlike Tesla, where there is no Tesla shop. It's really, I'd say the easiest way to put it is, well, not the easiest way to put it, it's just the reality is you're buying your car off the internet and hoping it works. That's basically what's going to happen. Is you have to have, you're essentially putting all this money on the website, buying a car right then and there on a website, never driven it, never tested it. And some people say, well, you can go to a place to test it. Well, that's different, because I'm testing a car that's not the one I'm buying. A lot of people, when it comes to buying cars, would rather test the car they're going to buy, because you're only going to test a car if you're going to buy it right then and there, because that's the car you're buying, the one you just tested, because it's what felt good. And this is an aspect where I say Porsche will have leaps and bounds ahead of Tesla for a while now, until Tesla can, I'd say, figure out or not be so stubborn about this mindset of, oh, we're going to do everything on the internet. nothing in store, that's old, nobody cares about that anymore, when in reality a lot of people still care about it. So I will give Porsche the knock on this one. I will give them the rub, essentially, because they are already more well established than Tesla. Now, the whole thing about range is a very, very interesting thing, especially with cars, because this is why I said overall electric cars are overpriced for what you're getting. Like, I'm paying $105,000 for a car that can go over 345 miles in total. So it covers 345 miles. Now, my 2005 Honda Accord did 350 miles very easily in a full tank. And that's why, and that car, realistically, when it came out, was probably about like less than $15,000, $20,000 in that range. So this overall is one of the main issues when it comes to electric cars in general. That's why I said, to me, the range difference wasn't so important, because they're still not up to par to what they should be. Especially if you want to push these as the standard and you want everybody to switch to electric cars, you have to provide the mileage that is necessary for that, because it's just not reliable. Like 280 miles, yes, if you're driving around your town, like say in Dallas, Houston, New York, well, I don't think you're driving a car in New York, period, but I don't think you're going to drive a car in New York, period. California is probably a better example. If you're driving a car in those cities, overall, yes, I will say that it makes sense to have at least 280, at least over 200 is fair, especially if you're only driving around in your state or, in your town. But, well, the state's pushing it, but I'd say in your town, like Los Angeles or San Diego or something like that, then yeah, perfectly fine. But when you start going out and you want to do trips and everything, this is where it becomes a big issue. And it leads into another thing, but I mainly want to focus on the range. The range, to me, I do agree, and I will give Tesla the rub on this one. They did a really good job by optimizing their batteries to have this amount of range for a car. Obviously, yes, we have to keep in mind that when it comes to electric cars, the range will vary, and even in cars in general, the range varies depending on airflow, depending on if you're coming in the direction where air is going, or, etc. Like, obviously, many things that come in handy, like, going down a hill or steep hills, or depending on where you're going, like, you have to keep that in mind. But this is something that we should be mindful of, that the range doesn't really matter on these electric cars that much, but it is also very important to understand that electric cars in general are not up to par to the standard that a normal gas car normally operates at, because gas cars overall have a great, like, the standard is 350 base range. That's what your standard should be all the time. Now, I do understand there's cars obviously with smaller tanks and things like that, but still, they can still do 350 miles pretty easily, or at least 340 in that range. So, and these are like I'll use an example. One of my friends' Kia Souls, the same thing. Like, and some people are gonna say, which friend? Okay, I have a lot of friends with a Kia Soul. I know a lot of people with them, so don't get on my grill about that. But they're still pushing 340 at least in a full tank very easily. And you get what I'm saying is this whole idea of electric cars are fine at 200 is compromising, and it's not healthy. And it's what I keep saying is it's just not realistic to keep pushing in this direction, that we should settle for less than what is the standard. And I get it, technology is different, but this is why I also tell you guys, like, buying an electric car now, you are a beta tester, because by the time electric cars are actually ready to be the replacement for gas vehicles, they will have batteries that will handle those ranges and even more range. So you're essentially beta testing right now. So keep that in mind. So I will say the range, I do agree that, for the price that Porsche is offering less range than the Model S performance version is very, I'd say, a little bit jarring, but, we should keep that in mind, that these cars are still not up to standard for what they should be, because they're still overpriced. Now, the 0 to 60 time, okay, I get it. These cars are luxurious vehicles. I get it. I understand that these cars are not meant for the average consumer. These are not meant for people that, that make at least like 60 grand a year in that range. Like, these are cars for people that are making over 100 grand a year, or at least, more, obviously, combined household income of at least 200 plus grand a year. And if you make more money than that, then obviously this car's for you. But for the 0 to 60 speed, the fact that it's a 0.2 difference, I will say this now, I am not a car guy. I've never been a car guy, but I do have basic understanding of cars in general because of a lot of people in my family that are mechanics and understand the whole, I'd say, mindset behind a car. That 0.2 difference, depending on your use case, is not that important. If you're just going to be using this car from going to work and everything, nobody cares about a 0.2 difference in speed. It does not matter. It really doesn't. And now, if you're racing these things in a strip, then yes, I will say that's where it comes in handy. But even then, there are downsides with the Tesla, because like one of my friends mentioned, when it comes to racing, because he's had experience racing these cars before, he told me that when you actually race them on a strip, like just straight line strip, just floor, like I would say gas the pedal, but they don't run on gas, so just floor it. The Tesla will have an advantage right off the bat due to the fact that it has a big punch at the very beginning. Like it gets a very good initial force right off the gate. But when you, I'd say, transition, or at least as it continues to go on, yes, the Porsche will overtake it very easily because of how Porsche handles the engine and how they handle the shifting. And even though, yes, these cars are automatic, let's keep these in mind. These are automatic cars, so there is no manual controls, nothing. These cars are pure automatic. It will still manage to outpace it very easily. It will outpace the Tesla. And this is why, obviously, the Porsche, specifically the Taycan Turbo S, is the only one that has been able to complete the very special track that is, for some reason, it's the one thing Tesla can't seem to do with their car regardless, because it just dies or overheats in the middle of the run. And the Porsche is able to do that. So it has that over Tesla. It has that moniker over them because it was able to complete this course in a record time as well. So I will say that the 0 to 60 is not very important, but I will say that depending on who you are in your use case, it will become more important depending. But it's still, to notice that difference of 0.2 seconds is very, very minimal. Like, I do not see how physically possible the human eye can even perceive that kind of, I'd say, difference. It's very hard to feel. And I get it. There's some people that have trained their entire life to drive race cars and everything that have already used to like telling this difference, but that's not everybody. That's a very, very specific group of people. And even then, if you're going to get a car that does, 0 to 60 in the fastest time, you're not buying these cars. You're going to be buying a Bugatti. You're going to be buying Ferraris. You're going to be buying Lamborghinis. Like, you're going to be buying high-end cars that are meant to do this, that are meant to be taken on a strip and have a field day. You're going to do that, but you're also paying a bigger price. So both these cars, for their price range, are really great 0 to 60 time. Now, the whole thing with the miles per hour, like, that's so dumb, guys. Like, really? You really are going to try to make an argument over 163 miles per hour versus 161? Like, really? We're really going to try to make this argument? Like, this is one thing I didn't agree with Marquez when he did in the podcast, and even in his video when they talked about it. I thought, this is dumb. This isn't helpful. This isn't, like I said, this is just comparing specs on paper, and this is not helpful, especially when comparing a car. Especially because when we think of the fundamental levels of cars, like, break down the fundamental level of understanding buying a car. Obviously, the legacy of the car is very important. The overall build of the car is very important. But we also, when we include electric cars, since we are talking about electrics, the charging network and the customer support are the two biggest factors that both sides have won very easily. Tesla, charging network is very easy to win, but their customer service is pretty dog poop. Like, Porsche's customer service is phenomenal based on what I've heard and from people that I know that own Porsches, and overall just in general from mechanical engineers and from that mindset, it is far better. And let's break that down. So the charging networks, obviously, yes, Porsche is not going to have as good as a charging network as Tesla. Will they have home chargers? Absolutely, because I'm assuming that's how you're supposed to charge these things, because if there's not any other charging network, then you're better off charging this thing at home. So that's a knock that I'll give on Tesla, that at least their charging network is advanced in comparison. But what's interesting to me is when it comes to the electric car specifically, the charging networks, or Tesla's supercharging network, is that companies don't want to work with them. And I think that's weird because it doesn't make sense why you wouldn't. But there is a benefit that does come with the Porsche charging network because its charging stations will charge at 270 watts, unlike Tesla's 250 watts. So that means with the 270 watt charging stations provided by Porsche, you will be able to charge your car much faster in comparison to the Tesla charging stations, which cap at 250. So that is a benefit in Porsche's camp. But in terms of availability, Tesla will always reign supreme due to the fact of how well they're expanding their charging network, and they're continuing expanding it. And it's just in many places. That's why you can, in theory, make a road trip with Tesla charging stations, or you can make a road trip with a Tesla, but it also is very dependent because Tesla is working little by little to work with gas stations to implement those charging stations there for people, so that makes it easier to do these road trips, because obviously that's one of the main things people want, is they want to be able to use these cars for road trips. Like the Model X is, it's a family vehicle. It's a very big vehicle, and making family trips would be very great with that car, but depending on where you go, that just may not be possible. And I get it that Tesla is doing the best they can to expand their networks, but you have to keep this in mind that it's still not at the standard that makes it an easy replacement for for gas powered vehicles. It's just not. And obviously Porsche, they don't want to work with Tesla, so they just made their own charging network. But I think in terms of Porsche, they will be a little bit better off in terms of the European market, because they will be expanding those networks much faster in the European market in comparison to the United States, where Tesla is the opposite. Tesla has a very sophisticated network in the States, but in other countries, it's very piss poor. So both sides, depending on where you buy these cars, the network may actually be different. So I will say it's a tie, especially because, like I said, that the Porsche charging network in Europe, specifically the European market, will be far better than Tesla's. So the gives and take. Now, when it comes to customer service, this is a landslide victory for Porsche, because I will say this now. Fixing a Porsche is much easier than fixing a Tesla. And that confuses a lot of people, because they're like, wait a minute. Porsche is a luxury car. How is it easier to get parts for a luxury car than it is for a Tesla? And let me explain. So when it comes, like I said, Porsche has been around for 100 years. Their entire blueprints and schematics for these cars have been around for over 100 years. People know how to fix these cars in and out very easily. And to be certified for it is not that easy. Like, a lot of people can be certified to work on a Porsche. It's not very hard. Like, it's like working on Fords. Like, you can be certified to work on a Ford pretty easy, but I think pretty much anyone can. But to be certified by the companies to work on their cars is not that hard, especially because they've been around for such a long time. And these blueprints and schematics have been taught in schools for years and years and years, like decades. They've been taught for a reason, because they are considered standards. They are considered industry standards. And that's why their parts are so widely available. So if you need the specific part for a Porsche, it's not going to be as hard as getting it for a Tesla, because since Tesla hasn't been around that long, getting a part from Tesla, you have to get it directly from Tesla, and they have to choose to sell it to the place you get it fixed, because there's not that many places that are certified to fix Teslas. I think in the US, it's very limited. Like when Marquez, he got into an accident in his Model S, or I think it was Model 3 or S. I don't know which one it was, but either way, he got into an accident. He waited 3 months to get his car back, and that was the minimum that they would give him, because they said it would have took 3 to 6 months to fix his car. While fixing a Porsche, a high ball scenario, I'm saying a high ball, depending on the wreck, you'll probably take a month. That, depending on what damages and everything, like if you got a fender bender, you're not spending more than probably, I'd say 2 weeks at best, depending on the place you send it to and how busy they are, an exception, because this all comes down to the place you send it to and how you fix it. But the fact that the Tesla repair takes so long is just terrible. That's terrible customer service, especially because you have to find a specific place that fixes the car, that's certified to fix it, and then Tesla has to decide to sell the parts to that person. And then you have to include all the time it takes to get those parts, and then you have to include what's their work schedule looking like, and you end up getting, like, at minimum, your car is going to be in the shop depending for like 3 to 6 months. And depending on the wreck, your car could in theory be in there for a whole year. And that's very scary, because I don't know anybody that can go an entire year without their car. Like, even though some people point at me, but that's a different story. Like, my car got completely destroyed, but whole different story. But we have to keep that in mind, that in terms of customer service, Tesla needs to improve this, because especially when you're working on the basis of you want to have an online car shop, that's not as easy as actually having the dealership that you can take your car there, they'll fix it there, like you set up an appointment, they check it what's wrong with your car, they'll tell you everything, they'll give you the detailed diagnostics of it, and then they'll tell you, hey, this is how much it would cost to fix it. Or if you're like, a special customer with them, discounts, things like that. But you get what I'm saying. Like, there's many benefits that come with Porsche's customer service in comparison to Tesla, because Tesla, you can't go anywhere. Like, you have to find it. And if there's no repair place in your town to fix it, you probably have to send it to another state completely. Marquez had to send his to Brooklyn. Like, dude lives in LA. like I think he lives in LA because of all the videos and everything he's posted. It seems like he is in the LA area in that aspect because his studio is in LA, but we're going by that assumption. But even then, he had to send this thing all the way to New York. And to me, that's crazy. But that's also because Marquez travels a lot. So nobody really has a good understanding of where he lives exactly. But actually, no. I'm also checking on his Twitter right now. It actually says that he changed his location to NYC. So he actually might be living full-time in New York instead of LA, even though his studio is in another place. But whole different thing. So he obviously is living in NYC, so he sent it to Brooklyn. But whole other thing. But overall, when we think about this entire topic, to me, it overall still supports the idea that there is no point in buying an electric car right now. I get it. This is Porsche's first electric car, and congratulations that Porsche is making this step in the right direction. But we should also keep in mind that other legacy car manufacturers are doing the same. Obviously, Ford has partnered with Rivian to make the first electric truck. The first Ford electric truck, all electric. And Rivian is still going to come out with their electric truck, which boasts much better specs than Tesla on paper, especially when we're talking about the first electric truck that's going to be on the market, 400-mile range, towing 11,000 pounds. Like, we're talking about a very impressive truck on paper. Now, this is on paper, though, so let's keep that in mind. But overall, I am very interested to see how this plays out. I will be covering this episode again, or not this episode, this topic, really, again later down the line as more developments come out. And, maybe I might even have a guest come on and share their personal experience with it. So I hope you guys come back and listen to that when we get around to it. Obviously, today was a very fun episode. Obviously, to me, I'd say it's probably, I wouldn't say it's one of the most enjoyable I've had in a while because, obviously, we did 2 big interviews back to back. So those episodes overall were still one of my favorites to do. I thank you guys so much for coming back and listening to the show. It really means a lot to me. Obviously, we hit over 36 downloads in the time of this recording. So you guys literally blew it out of the water. Like, I was baffled when I saw that I just saw that we jumped up over 55 downloads in a day and got over 500. Like, to me, that's crazy. And we're still like not even, I get it. We're like 8 months into the show. The show's only 8 months because we started in January. And I get it. The show is still growing and everything. And to me, it's just incredible that it keeps growing. Obviously, the listener count keeps growing. We're already at over 100 listeners in not even my first year of having this show. I'm very grateful about it. I'm very blessed. Obviously, some people keep making jokes. How about your Patreon? I'm like, okay, that's a whole different thing. I'm grateful just for even having one person donating. Like, and I get it. It takes time, and I'm just being patient and humble about it. And, you guys have been continuing to make this dream incredible for me. So I greatly appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for that. I'm humbled about it. And I mean that in all honesty. And I hope you guys come back and listen to Friday's episode as we cover the Apple event in detail and go over, I'd say, the big talking points, because there's some points that I will decide to skip over because they weren't that important. But I'll leave that to you guys. So thank you guys so much for coming back and listening to today's episode. It really means a lot to me. Also, side note, I will be leaving the link to Marquez's podcast episode that he did about this topic and his YouTube video about it so that you can get the full context from Marquez's side about this. So obviously, because I want to make sure you guys have the full context and get a better understanding of this topic if you're really interested in this topic. So thank you guys so much for your time. I love you guys to death. Have yourselves a wonderful week, and I'll see you guys on Friday. Bye, guys. Hey there. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for taking time out of your day and listening to today's episode. If you're interested in supporting the show, whether it be financially, clicking the follow button, or just sharing the episode, it all works for me, guys. Thank you guys so much for your time, and I love you guys to death.